OHSAA pregame tailgate show. I'm TJ Downing, joined by Matt Pennington, my guy Jackson Lightcap, Mark Milano, and Jeff Tyler, as we're getting you set now for the Division I state championship game here inside of Tom Benson Stadium on the grounds of the Hall of Fame Village. What a great day we've had here so far, guys. We've crowned 2 new state champions. Toledo Central Catholic just wrapped up theirs, Kirtland this morning, and as we know last night, the Massillon Tigers, they were able to take care of it in Division II. Now we kind of flip our attention to Division I, the big boy division, right? And my guys over here for TKDS Sports, they have all the insider info on Springfield. As we know, the Lakewood St. Edward team, a powerhouse. What they've done over the last couple of years, they're looking for 3 in a row. It just so happens to be that the previous 2 were over Springfield. So we're going to talk about that a little bit. We want to remind everyone the official beverage of the OHSAA is chocolate milk. Go and see the American Dairy Association, drink-milk.com. And Mark, when you start to think about what Lakewood St. Edward does, and Coach Tom Lombardo, it's so impressive. You know, we can talk about the offensive line, and we will. But just the program itself, the culture, how rich it is, the green and gold do a great job.
I don't care what it is when you're over at St. Ed's, whether it's football, basketball, lacrosse, and I had a chance to see them do that. But what Tom Lombardo does over there is really pretty special. I love his enthusiasm. You know, he's getting a little bit older, but I'll tell you what, when they come out onto that field, he's sprinting out there in front of his team like he normally does. And one guy who speaks so highly of Tom Lombardo is Tim Budd, a guy that we know pretty well. Tim coached with him when he was over at Highland, did a great job that was over there. I'm waiting to hear from these two to tell me if the South is going to rise again, though.
It may. We're going to find out here in just a few minutes. We know that Spectrum News 1 will carry the live broadcast of it on TV. You can also listen to the game on the OHSAA radio network. Go to OHSAA.org and you can catch that live online stream. Jeff, when you talk about Coach Tom Lombardo, well, let me talk about him here first. He was one of my coaches in the 2002 North-South All-Star Classic. Back then, he was at Medina Highland. He was at Medina Highland. Had a chance to have him and also John Gibbons. They were my coaches in that game. Just the attitude that they bring to the field.
Yeah.
You know, and you've got a chance to play a couple golf rounds with him.
Yeah.
Great guy, and this is going to be exciting to see.
Yeah, I was just on the field, you know, congratulating him for being here. He's going for number 6 for himself, number 7 for the school, and you know, if you're around him, you know, if you don't know he's the head football coach at Ed's, you wouldn't know because he's just a really calm dude. You know, even right now, take his blood pressure. It's probably 75 right now.
Is that good or bad? I
don't know. He's just always calm. Yeah, and I played some golf with him, and he's the same way on the golf course. My nickname for him is Microsoft because he'll hit a drive down the middle, he'll right click, copy, paste, and do it again. That's just the type of guy he is, and it shows in the field here.
You know, one of the conversations we had last night between you and I was coaches that have won state titles at multiple different schools. You know, Nate Moore just wrapped up his 3rd state championship at a different school. Had it at Minster, had it down there at LaSalle, and now has done it at Massillon. Coach has done it here, multiple schools. Right. For Tom Lombardo, what he's going to bring out on the field is something that is what we kind of thought about earlier with Toledo Central Catholic. A dominant performance. They beat Watterson 27-7. For the Springfield team to come in here, Mo Douglas, 24 seasons at the helm. They come into the playoffs with 5-5. Talk about what they do down there, and you know, some injuries early on, allowing 16 teams in. This is the highest seed that's still left playing.
Yeah, absolutely. When you take a look at what the Springfield Wildcats brought to the table this season, I've said it on our Saturday show on the TKDS Sports Network Sports Now, and I'll say it again. There's no other team in the state of Ohio that has faced more adversity rather than the Springfield Wildcats. At one point this season, they were on their 5th string quarterback. They had 5 quarterbacks this season, or 5 players who have attempted at least 10 or more passes. This is a team that has just been absolutely derailed with injuries, and entering week 9 of the season, they were 3-5. They were in the cellar of the GWAC. They got 2 big wins to close out the regular season, built some momentum, and head coach Mo Douglas, he'll be the first one to tell you, he told all of us here at the TKDS Sports Network, just get me in the playoffs. He at one point was sitting as the 15th seed in the playoff picture. He works up to the 12th seed, he got to the playoffs, and then he got his wish. Big win against Wayne, big win against Centerville, goes out, takes down the number 1 seed in the region, Olin Tangi, a big win against Dublin Kaufman, and then took down Moeller for the 3rd consecutive year last year. The Springfield Wildcats, they're on a Cinderella run, but number 1, and most importantly, they're healthy, and that has what has propelled their Cinderella run.
Highest 12 seed to ever make it to a state championship game too, and that's one of the first things that I had asked you about them. How could you be 3-5 and make it into the playoff and make this stretch run that they have right now? But I'm pretty impressed with some of their I think the quarterback's outstanding. I love the wide receivers with Martin and Bradley. They like to stretch the field. You two have seen these guys play a ton.
Yes, it's one thing with this Springfield team that you also have to take into account is the fact that we talk about being on the 5th string quarterback. They had their 4-star cornerback come into the Ohio State University, Aaron Scott, a cornerback, mind you, was going to Ohio State to play that position. He was their starting quarterback at some points during this season. It goes to show, Jackson talked about all the adversity that Springfield has had to face so far this season. The other thing that you also have to keep in mind, Brent Upshaw, since he went down in week 2, he tried to come back in week 4 against Wayne. Springfield went from the air raid offense that we're used to seeing this Wildcats team run to, since that injury in week 4 where Brent Upshaw went down, I believe there was one game where they passed the ball more than they got more yards through the air than they did on the ground. That was last week against Moeller. And there was one other game in the season they threw for 133, they ran for 133. Outside of that, since Brent Upshaw went down, they have been a run-heavy team behind Javen Norman, and he's looked good as the senior back out there in Springfield.
Before we talk a little bit about what just happened in the Division III state championship game, kind of recap last year. We know, again, this is the 3rd time these two schools will meet. But last year, in this same venue, Springfield, they came out tough. You know, some certain things. The young man for Lakewood, I believe it was number 6, the running back, he was able to do some things that really kind of gashed the defense for Springfield. But kind of recap that game, Jackson.
Well, yeah, absolutely. That has been the main story in this state championship game over the last couple of years. 267 rushing yards allowed for the Springfield Wildcats in 2021. 272 rushing yards allowed last season in 2022. St. Ed's, there's no doubt about it. They can run the football. Springfield wants to win here today. They have to get involved in that front 7. They've got to stop the run.
Mark, how do you stop the run, right? When you have an offensive line, right, with potentially 4 future Big Ten offensive linemen. You talk about Roebuck, who's going to be going to Michigan, the Armstrong brothers, who will be going down to Ohio State, Soltis, a stud. Jeff, you and I have had a chance to cover Walsh University. Younger Soltis is playing offensive line there for them. I mean, this is a group that's like, you could put anybody back behind this line, Mark. You, the pony, the runner that you are.
If I'm running from guys as big as you two, I run really fast.
I mean, you think about the holes that these guys can create, and it puts so much pressure. As we talked about the earlier game in Division III, where Toledo Central Catholic has this big offensive line, and they're pushing their weight against a guy that's, you know, maybe giving up 80, 90 pounds.
Right.
Something has to give, right?
Absolutely. I mean, just the sheer size of those guys down there, you know, to be by the field, I don't consider myself a little guy, but I feel small by them. I mean, they're 6'6", 300 and whatever average, and got cleats on and a helmet, and they just look like monsters. But, you know, they're athletic on top of that. You know, you're not going to be going to the Big Ten if you can't pull and you can't do other things at that offensive line. So it's pretty impressive what they're able to do with that.
Yeah, and to your point, how you stop the run, you have to put more guys in the box that you've got over there. But the problem that you have with Eds, Casey Bullock's back. And that's a big difference because he wasn't there at the start of the season. He wasn't there when they played against Massillon. And I'll tell you what, his return has made a big difference on this team. And when you look at that offensive line, Brandon White, he's shorter than all of us. He gets lost behind those big offensive linemen that they have over there, and he's just having a tremendous season. But I'll tell you what, when you look at what Eds does up front, running behind that big offensive line, that makes the running back look good, and it makes the quarterback look good.
Think about the smack talk that probably goes on between Roebuck and the Armstrong brothers when we're on the backside of it's kind of been doomsday, or it's been really bad in the state of Ohio after Michigan was able to beat us. You know, the smack talk that goes on between those guys. guys, but you mentioned Brandon White. He's one of the young and up-and-coming great star tailbacks in Northeast Ohio and the state of Ohio. But when you start to think about, guys defensively for St. Ed, and Jeff, we were here early in the season when we had the Northeast Ohio versus America showcase. This was a Center Grove team out of Indiana that came in here, multiple state champions.
3 in a row.
And they come in here, and Eds just was able to roll. But talk about the young man that's going to Notre Dame playing defensive end for St. Ed.
He's like shooting out of a cannon when he fires in there off the ball. I called a game earlier in the season, and he almost took the hand off a couple times. That's how quick he is going to Notre Dame. They also got a player going to Northwestern there. They got an Akron U player. So there's
Regovich is going to Northwest.
So there's D1 talent all over the field, as you would expect at Eds. The thing with Eds is, and somebody asked me this last night, what makes Eds so good? And I said they don't do anything flashy. You watch them play, and it's not like they're not throwing bombs constantly. They're just very methodical about what they do. They run the rock well. They throw when they need to, and they just move the ball up and down the field. Sometimes it will, and that's what they do well. Is they just do what they do well, and they just do it over and over and over.
Logan Thomas is a young man that's going to Notre Dame, and when you think about, as we talked, Mark mentioned that Casey Bullock is back. He's committed to Davidson, and as we talked to Coach Tom Lombardo on the teleconference with OHSAA earlier this week, for his backup quarterback to come in and get those valuable reps, he's not really a backup anymore. He's a guy that can come in and be a full-service starter. So when we talk about Week 16 and you get more plays, coming in for a guy that's a starter who's going to be a Division I quarterback, for Tom Lombardo, he knows however it shakes out, he's got a guy that he can put faith into.
Absolutely, but I will say this, there is maybe a bit of an inexperience factor, especially going up against this tough Springfield secondary. When you look at the Springfield secondary, Javen Norman, I beg your pardon, is Javen Martin, 3 interceptions on the season, and then of course the 4-star cornerback commit to Ohio State. That Springfield secondary is very, very tough. So if they were to go to the sophomore quarterback, Springfield, that defensive coordinator, they're going to dial up some schemes and make it hard on them throughout the game.
Tell me about Royce Rogers, the center, sophomore, 6'1", 258 pounds. We mentioned on our earlier tailgate show, Toledo Central Catholic line, seniors all the way across the board. This is a line for Coach Douglas that is junior, senior, sophomore, junior. Guys that you have to replace that may not have played last year or the year before that against this St. Edward team. When you think about a sophomore at center, a guy that's got to kind of, with these conditions outside. Now the rain, I'll tell you guys, I just came back in here, it's kind of slowed, but the biggest thing you worry about, Jackson, is the exchange, the quarterback-center exchange. And when you have a sophomore at center, that can be an issue.
Not to mention, not only a sophomore at center, but also a junior at quarterback, and not only a junior quarterback, but a quarterback starting his first varsity season, and he's also banged up through the majority of the season as well. So that's certainly something to keep an eye out on, but Springfield, Coach Mo Douglas has them well coached. You already know that they are doing these exchanges during practice. I'm not going to say that it's going to be an issue tonight for the Springfield Wildcats.
Yeah, it's always different when you have a guy lined up right over top of you, so that, the pressure that you get, Mark, when you have a nose guard, a defensive tackle, a one technique, a shade technique, whatever it may be, when you have a guy over top of you, you can do it well in practice. Everybody looks good in shorts and shoulder pads and a helmet and walk through all that, but when you actually get out here and you're talking about playing for a state championship and these two teams know each other, but when you get out there and you actually snap the ball and it's live and the title's on the line, it becomes a whole lot different.
I'll tell you, one of the things that has to be in the back of your mind, since the Pro Football Hall of Fame is right behind us, they don't want to be the Buffalo Bills of Ohio high school football. This would be 3 in a row that they've lost coming into this game. But I think when you talk about Eds, that you're going to want to beat Eds early in the season, because as time goes by, they keep getting better and better and better, and now they're better and they're healthy. I think it's going to be a tall order for Springfield, but we really thought that Toledo Central Catholic was going to run away with this game in the first half, and it was a ball game. So you guys have said it, turnovers matter.
How about on top of that, Matt, when you think about special teams, we saw that come into play last night. We saw that come into play earlier today, the game just prior, when Watterson had a chance to field that punt cleanly. They didn't. That turnover changes the game. Special teams, you don't have as many plays inside of the game and snaps that you would defensively and offensively. That puts that much more of a premium on that phase of the football game.
Yeah, especially when you take a look at the amount of punts we've seen so far just today alone. The weather is definitely going to play an impact in that, even if the rain isn't coming down super hard or even if it's just a mist on the field. Turf's still wet. Ball's still going to get wet, especially on the punt. So you've got to be aware of that. You have to field the ball cleanly because we saw it a couple different times today. You get a punt that could give your team good starting field position. You muff it. Your opponent has the ball in your own territory. So you end up backing your defense up that you just ended up taking off the football field. You had a great stop. You put them back out on the football field and you put them in a terrible position to try to make a stop. So weather, obviously, you said the rain seems like it's calmed down a little bit, but with how the field is, with how wet the field is still going to be all night long, there's no sun out to dry the field. It's going to be an issue, and it's definitely going to be something that all
Maddie, it's always sunny in Canton, Ohio.
with all these lights on, you might think it is sunny.
No, it is not. But the lights are shining bright, and I'll tell you what, here inside of Tom Benson Stadium, as we get ready for this Division I state championship game, remember, go to OHSAA.org to be able to stream the live audio on OHSAA Radio Network. Also, Spectrum News 1 is where you can catch that game live on TV. Mark, when we start to break down what happened just a little bit ago, you know, we talked about the first half. Watterson was in it, had that muffed punt, couldn't field it. You look at what was the second half, different game, a tale of two halves. Toledo Central Catholic is stout.
They are, and we talked about this before we got on the air here. If you just looked at the statistics from the game, and you looked at the number of plays that they ran, the offensive output that they had, it was almost equal. One thing was a glaring difference, and it was the turnovers. In these games, whatever weakness that you have is going to be magnified. You can't have a weakness that's in here. And the other thing that was pretty cool, and this game could have changed dramatically, Watterson had a touchdown that was taken off the board. If not for the instant replay, it's a little bit different ballgame that you get.
What did you kind of take away from it, Jeff? I know that you were talking, we were texting a little bit about defensively, some things out there. There was an attitude.
Oh, there was a swag for sure on that side, on TCC side, and it's the first time I've seen them play this season, and they can fly around, but I saw a little bit of nothing dirty, just swag is the best way I would say that.
There's nothing wrong with that. Well, let's talk about swag. Talk about this Springfield team, some of the guys that have been around who maybe seniors now have experienced those two previous losses, Jackson. The swag that they may have, the confidence that they may have, saying, listen, I know some of these guys that I've squared up against with Lakewood St. Edward. The confidence that team has, and again, it starts with Coach Douglas. What do they bring to the table? Who are some guys, senior-laden guys, that step out to you or stick out to you for Springfield?
Absolutely. It's going to be the running back, Javen Norman. Javen Norman, 1,294 yards on the ground, averaging 6.3 yards per carry, 14 touchdowns. That he is first in the Greater Western Ohio Conference when it comes to yardage. And then you also take a look at that receiving core as well. The receiving core, Dalen Wilkins, Deshaun Martin, upperclassmen as well. With Brent Upshaw, he's in trouble. He's going to have to throw. Look for him to go their way. Two big upperclassmen receivers that are also quick as well. They're going to make it tough on St. Edward's secondary, and then also the entire defensive side of the football as well. They're led by Kyron Dolby with 142 tackles during the season. Jackson Hines, 9.5 sacks on the season. And of course, I already mentioned Javen Martin, 3 interceptions. Aaron Scott, the senior cornerback going to Ohio State. The entire defensive side of the football for Springfield, they're going to be tough. They're going to be tough today for St. Edwards, but also those skill players on the offensive side of the football. Look for them to step up big if the Wildcats want to go home state champions.
The Ohio High School Athletic Association pregame tailgate show, powered by our friends at TKDS Sports. These guys are a part of that. My guy Matt Pennington and Jackson Lightcap, Jeff Tyler, Mark Milano, myself, TJ Downing, part of the Start Media Group, as we bring you this pregame tailgate show and get you ready for the Division I state championship between Lakewood, St. Edward, and Springfield. The one thing we talk about passing the ball, right? When is you got these certain conditions, you know, you're still going to take shots, right? And Mark, you mentioned it. Load up the box if you're Springfield, try and stop the run. But then you look at a guy like Kyan Mason. He's a threat. And Jeff, we saw that when we came out here for that Week 1 showcase. Number one, he's an active player. He's got speed, skill. He can burn you.
Absolutely. Catch him and, maybe some quick passes, some slants, things like that, maybe a bubble screen, something like that. When you got that many in the box, I like to see stuff quick hitters over the middle or like a screen of some sort. So I would assume that's how they're going to attack that.
Yeah, and I think that both teams don't want to have to throw the football when they have to throw the football.
Right.
They're going to want to try to throw it on first down, maybe get some of those quick slants. But with the athletes that they have that are on the field, you get guys in space, both of these teams create problems for defenses with the speed that they've got.
Matt, one thing I also kind of take away is from the game last night where Massillon was able to beat Hoban. It seemed like nobody, Coach Timmy T and Coach Nate Moore, they were not willing to take that deep shot, that explosive play. Take that home run shot downfield. It was run, get to the red zone, and all of a sudden there was a big defensive stand. There was a turnover, whatever it may be, a stop. We saw some penalties from Hoban in the second half of that ball game. When you think about eliminating the passing game, and you have multiple tailbacks that you can go to. For St. Ed, they have Josh Grottle. We know what White brings to the table, but then you can bring in Josh Grottle. When you have multiple tailbacks that you can give that guy a blow, get him a rest, you can move him in and out of series and possessions, that gives you a big benefit in the plays that you're calling.
Yeah, it's going to give St. Ed's a big benefit. Also, Springfield, they're going to have a decent benefit when it comes to that. I mean, we haven't even mentioned the sophomore running back versus the Wildcats yet, Deontay Long. 184 attempts on the season, 870 yards, 8 touchdowns on the year. So if Norman's getting a little gassed, if he's not able to run as efficiently as you would normally see, the 6.3 yards per carry, they've got another back that they can put into the field. The other thing that Jackson didn't mention when it comes to the stats for Norman as well, 22 receptions, 241 yards, and 3 touchdowns out of the backfield as well. So that's another thing that St. Ed's going to have to keep an eye out for in this game as well.
TG, when we're looking at these teams, we always talk about offense, defense, special teams. So I'm going to lean on the two of you. I've watched the kicking game from Springfield. It's not the greatest that they have, and if it comes down to that could be a big difference in this game too.
Absolutely. I mean, the kicking numbers have not necessarily been there for the Springfield Wildcats. He'll go out there, he'll nail the extra points, but Springfield, that offense is going to have to move the football today and get in the end zone. Springfield, there's no way that they can win this game unless they score touchdowns. They have got to capitalize drives off. They have got to score touchdowns. And going back to the Springfield Wildcats, that offensive side of the football, yes, they're heavy in the run, but what they need to do to get a win tonight, they need to pound the rock early on. They need to establish a legitimate run game against the St. Ed's defense, because later in the game, that'll not only wear down St. Edward's, but it'll also open up the play action and RPO as well.
Isn't that what everybody typically says, coach-wise? It's like, hey, eliminate turnovers and who can establish the run, right? It always goes, I don't want to say it's just Ohio football, but it's a game of football, right? Who can establish the run and sustain it throughout 4 quarters?
It almost sounds boring, right? I mean, it's just like, hey, this is the same, let's copy, like Coach Lombardo, let's copy and paste last week's speech. Keep it clean, no penalties, let's punt the ball, let's catch the ball, let's throw the ball. Just keep it simple.
Well, hey, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right, Mark? I mean, if you can continue to pull guards, run power, move guys, with a big offensive line, and eliminate, and let's not talk about just the turnovers, but working the clock. How fastly can you work that clock down when you establish an early lead? Whoever it may be, kill the clock, keep the opposing offense off the field, and you're going to work yourself to a state championship.
Well, I'll tell you what, special teams play, keep talking about it. Punt returns, kick returns, that can be a big difference in these games. Somebody jumps out quick, forces that other team to do something that they don't want to do. That's trouble. But when we talk about the game of football, basketball, baseball, since you know baseball guys, when it comes down to it, you're gonna throw your best pitch, right, Matt? TJ, if you like running the football, you're going to run the football.
Yeah.
You're playing golf. You know that 5-iron's your go-to club.
You got it.
You're pulling it. These guys are creatures of habit. They're all going to do whatever it takes to get them there that they're most comfortable with.
But whatever it may come down to, Jackson, when you think about if you dig yourself an early hole, you almost force yourself to have to pass the ball and get out of whatever plan or let's call it scripted plays that you may have wanted to start out with. You have to go off script, and now you have to pass the ball. You're kind of going doing things that you don't necessarily want to do early in a game.
And if that happens, Springfield's in trouble. Not just because of the scoreboard, but because they cannot do what they want to do, just as you mentioned. Springfield, they have got to put up points first. They have got to score first rather than St. Ed's. This is a game that if Springfield wants a chance to win, because of how great St. Ed's is, because of how dominant St. Ed's is, they cannot go down on the scoreboard early. They've got to stay within the game. They got to get to the fourth quarter to give themselves a chance to pull it out, because if they can get to the fourth quarter, a chance to pull it out and win a state title for the city of Springfield, Springfield has a chance. Their last 3 wins, the Springfield Wildcats, they've trailed at halftime, and they've all come back in the second half to win the game. So Springfield, they've had slow starts over the last couple of weeks. They've had slow starts a lot this season. That cannot be the case here tonight, because they need to get to the fourth quarter a chance to win the game, because against this tough St. Ed's team, I don't think that they'll be able to win it from behind.
Mark, that speaks volumes right there, right? We talk about resolve. We talk about handling adversity, and that's within a ball game. That's within this season. And I know every season is different, but we had a chance to see our buddy Jeff Lindesmith, who is a state champion head coach for Central Catholic, the Crusaders, right here in town. I'm sorry, I know you're black and gold. It's your alma mater, St. Thomas Aquinas. That's your big rival, right? The Holy War. But talking to Jeff Lindesmith and thinking about this matchup here tonight, the third time you're going to see somebody. We had a chance to call that Coldwater game where Central Catholic had seen them 2 years prior, or for 2 years prior, and they were all blowout games. Central found a way to get it done inside of the Horseshoe, and they won the third matchup against Coldwater. How much do you think Springfield is kind of leaning on what they've seen over the last 2 years and that resolve to finally get it done in the third matchup?
I think there's a lot of it, because Ed's is who we think they are. And they're going to give you the same thing every year, year in, year out. So they have a good idea what's going on. And they do have a common opponent in Moeller that they had both wound up knocking off. But when I look at St. Ed's, and we talk about the competitive of Tom Lombardo, and I hate to do this to you, but when they played against Glen Oak in the first round of the playoffs, it got a little bit chippy, guys.
That's an understatement.
And Glen Oak was coming down, getting ready to score. Lombardo put the first team defense back in to make sure that he preserved the shutout.
Statement.
Right. You want to do that? This is what we're going to wind up doing.
Well, Jeff, you had a chance to call that game, and St. Ed, they would see back-to-back weeks a Federal League opponent.
Yeah.
They would take care of Glen Oak, and then they would see McKinley take care of them. You know, we had a chance to see Rodrigo Bardwell in here, and also Antonio Hall, McKinley guys, head coach Antonio Hall for the McKinley Bulldogs, for the chippiness and all that, and to be able to just kind of stay within your game and not allow yourself to make those mistakes that somebody draws you into.
Right.
You know, if I'm Springfield, I'm out there, I'm going to try and get those offensive linemen for St. Edward to do something that they don't typically do.
The king of smack has spoken.
I don't disagree with you that the effort may be there for that. However, I don't think it'll work. I saw it firsthand. This team takes on the persona of Lombardo. It's
true.
Laid back, chill, do what you're going to do. We're going to do it back to you. And we're going to by marching the ball down the field and scoring. I was very impressed with how him and his team handled that situation. It was at a point where I felt at about the 10-minute mark in the fourth that the game was going to be called. Talked to the officials afterwards, and it almost was.
Yeah.
Lombardo was able to stay chill, keep his guys chill, and just march, like you said. Glen Oak started running, and it really wasn't the blowout it was on paper. Glen Oak moved the ball. You know, Ed's tends to bend, not break. They'll blitz here and there, but they're typically not just sending everybody and flying in there. They're just going to play their zone. They're going to sit back. They're going to make the plays they need to make. They're going to keep guys in front of them, and he just does it week after week.
The Ohio High School Athletic Association pregame tailgate show, getting you ready for the Division I state championship game, kicking off here inside of Tom Benson Stadium in just a few minutes. We will get you all the way up to the pregame show with the OHSAA radio network. We'll turn it over to them, and my guy Justin Zwick will be on the call. Had a chance to see him catch up on the halftime show from the previous game, and you know, obviously a lot of excitement from him and his Massillon Tigers. But when you talk about quarterback play and being able to stand behind an offensive line and know that you will have that time, You also have to look at the blitzing aspect of the game, Jackson. For Springfield, and as I talked to Coach Tom Lombardo earlier in the week on our teleconference with OHSAA, it was, you've probably seen everything under the sun defensively where nobody's going to play you straight. They would be stupid to do that with your offensive line. So you're getting the blitzes, you're getting the guys coming off the edge, linebackers through the A-gap, you're getting twists, you're getting slants, you're getting stunts, all of that. Springfield, is that something that you've seen from them throughout this year that they're capable of doing? Because they're going to have to do it.
Yeah, they will bring pressure. They can get to the quarterback. That's a quick defense that flies at the nose of the football. But I will say this, Casey Bullock, the quarterback for St. Edwards, is a multi-year starter for a reason. He's going to Davidson for a reason. He is perfect at reading the defense. Not only that, when he reads it and the defense comes on blitzing, well, guess what? He also is elusive. He can get out of the pocket. He can make plays, getting it done with his legs, throwing the football as well. So Casey Bullock, he is going to step up big tonight for St. Edwards. If you take the Springfield Wildcats into example, if St. Ed's were to blitz Springfield, Brent Upshaw, remember, it's a first-year starter. He doesn't have as much experience as Casey Bullock does. Springfield, I think, will struggle picking up the blitz, especially with that inexperience at the offensive line.
Mark, when you think about a quarterback like Casey Bullock, who has been banged up and injured, we've seen guys within a game when they get injured, or whether they've been out, like a Dorian Pringle last night. He missed the last 2 or 3 games. Maybe it took him a series or 2 to get his feet back underneath him. For me, as I've dealt with injuries throughout my career, it was in your head.
Right.
That first play out there, something is going to happen again. So is that going to maybe be in the back of Casey Bullock's head when he's rolling out of the pocket, as Jackson mentioned? I'm going to take off, use my feet, but that injury that I sustained just a few weeks ago, am I trying to protect it a little bit within the game?
Well, it was actually longer than a few weeks ago. You know, when he came back, I would say if this was his first or second game back, maybe a little bit different story. But I tell you what, when I watched him and I watched their last game that they played, he was pretty smooth back there, having a great offensive line. Doesn't make him have to run around a whole lot. He's not twisting or doing anything like that. But make no bones about it, both of these teams can stretch the field with their quarterbacks and their wide receivers. So you got to wonder, is there something that somebody's going to do, since they know each other so well? Are we going to see an onside kick? Try to steal a deal? I don't know. We're going to have to wait and see what happens here. I don't know that you can conventionally just line up against St. Ed's and say, we're going to go mano a mano with you, we're going to beat you. I just don't think you can do that.
And you know, one of the things that Tom Lombardo mentioned earlier this week was that the game last year against Springfield, it was the young man number 6 for St. Ed, the running back, that kind of did some things that they weren't expecting to see, and they were playing more straight up, Springfield was, but they were able to gash because of that more scat back type look. Now, Matt, when we start to think about last Friday, state semifinals, right? Down to Piqua, you talk about beating Moeller, Springfield does, and that's an overtime game. How much do you take away from that if you're thinking Springfield, hey, we're in a tight, close race all the way down to the 4th quarter, we may know how to finish a tighter ball game a little bit more and maybe lean on some of that adversity that you faced when you had starters out early in the season and you barely had a 500 record?
Well, definitely the overtime game does give Springfield a little bit of an advantage when it comes to getting that experience in close games against really good teams. But the other thing that I take away from that is it's more time wearing on your starters, going into overtime, playing more time on the field. And then you've got St. Ed's in their state semifinal winning 26-3. You don't really have to have your starters out on the field when you're
They're
up
taking
like
the tape
much.
off at like the end of the 3rd quarter, you know, like unlacing the shoes.
They're winding things down as the game starts going on. Springfield, they weren't able to do that against Moeller last week. They had to play all the way to the very last snap of the football game. It was a slant over the middle, got stopped at the 1-yard line. Moeller got stopped at the 1, and that's what cost them the game. Or at least it's what cost them going into the second overtime. So I think the fact that Springfield had to play in overtime last week, I think that's going to, it helps but hurts. It's kind of a catch-20 on it. It helps give them experience against really good teams, and it helps get the players such as Brent Upshaw a little bit more experience against some pretty good teams, but it also hurts because they're not rested as well as a team like St. Ed's.
Mark, as Matt just mentioned, you talk about St. Ed and what they were able to do last week in their state semifinal game. game, beating Hilliard Bradley 26-3 in that legendary venue down there at Garland Field. Partner, we've had a chance to call a lot of games down there.
That stadium.
Unfortunately for me, my only playoff game that I ever played in was down there at Garland Field. That was back when it was a mud pit. Now they have a nice little.
And I was there with
they
you.
have a nice little surface now there, but you know that legendary venue has hosted some great playoff football games. For St. Edward, you think about dominating people so much, and you're not really tested in certain times. You look at their schedule. Okay, yeah, you lost one to Massillon. That was a tight ball game over there at Paul Brown Tiger Stadium. But you think about being pushed and being tested late in the game and forcing your players to kind of figure out how to finish. And as we talked about earlier on the previous Tailgate show, the legendary coach Jack Rose used to say, you have to find a way to win. And that's not an easy thing to do with young kids.
No, it's not. And I think that the mental toughness, the mental aspect of this game, much like golf, you have to be pretty tough there. You're going to make a mistake. And you have to understand that if you make that mistake, you got to set that aside. You have to go back out and play the next play. And if you get down, let's say you're down by 10 points, there isn't a touchdown that's going to give you 10. You know, you have to kind of keep chipping away at it. I can't wait to see these two teams line up against each other tonight. We talked about the fact that it's a Division I, big time football that we have over here. But we've had some great games out here. Now, this is a question I want to pose to all of you. This is going to be the last game for some of these guys. They may never put the pads on again. So think about that. What was it like for all of you that last time that you suited up when you were in high school?
Well, for me, multiple sports, it was awesome to be in that game and be in that moment and be with your teammates and having the realization that this can be. And for them, they know it is, right? It's the last game of the season. Some teams going through aren't always in that moment because it's maybe week 2 of the playoffs. So they're thinking, if we get a win, we're still going to be able to go to practice on Monday. So it's a little bit different than that. But for them to know that it's the last game, I promise you that they're in the headspace of knowing that and trying to soak that in while trying to get a W.
Well, Mark, I think Mark lined me up perfectly for this question because as I always think about my wins and losses, I take my losses into account a lot more than the wins, and I was able to play some reps after high school football, but I wear this watch here because it was when Tim Tebow and Coach Urban Meyer down there in Florida, they kicked our butts in the national championship game. This is the championship watch right there. I don't have the ring because we didn't win the game, but that was my final game. Those were my final snaps of playing football, and it was to the tune of 41-14, losing in the national championship game, the biggest game out there. And it's still something that I think about to this day, Jackson. These kids, these guys that won't get extra snaps after tonight, they will remember what happens here inside of Tom Benson Stadium for the rest of their life.
Absolutely, TJ. You know the saying, leave it on the field. That's exactly what those kids are going to do, whether they're going to play at the next level or whether this is their last game of their entire playing career. They're going to leave it all out on the field and expecting a passionate physical game tonight.
So when we get ready to start thinking about the starting lineups and maybe some predictions on this football game here tonight, we want to remind you all again, Spectrum News 1, that's where you can watch this game live on TV, and then also stream it live audio, the radio broadcast with our good friends at the Ohio High School Athletic Association on their radio network. Go to OHSAA.org, and remember, the official beverage of the Ohio High School Athletic Association is chocolate milk. So go to drink-milk.com and check in with our good friends at the American Dairy Association. All right, guys, starting lineups coming to you here right now. When we look at the quarterback spot, we've talked about Casey Bullock. We've talked about Brandon White. We've talked about the big offensive line, which goes from left tackle to right tackle, 295, 305, 305, 270, and Ben Roebuck heading to the Michigan Wolverines. Maybe he'll have Coach Harbaugh. Maybe he won't have Coach Harbaugh. We still don't know yet. But Ben Roebuck, 6'8", 320 pounds. Alongside him at right guard, Sawyer Primatine. You got Archer Soltis. We talked about the center, 6'2", 305. Devontae Armstrong and Deontay Armstrong hold down the left side of that line. Your receivers, we talked about Kaya Mason, Zach Hackelman, and also Brian Sullivan and Michael Balo. When we look at the defense for St. Ed's, Logan Thomas, the young man going to Notre Dame, Jaden Woods, also Troy Regovich, Padraig McMahon, John Slapper, Nate Gregory, Xavier Stiles, Miles. They are your guys filling out the second part of the defense, the middle part of the defense. Your secondary, Bradley Eaton, Eddie Andrews, Cameron Boone, and Joshua Hayden. I see that Boone name. It reminds me of my old boy Alex Boone, who played a lot of years with the San Francisco 49ers, played with the Cardinals, the Minnesota Vikings, was a legend there at Ohio State. What he was able to do, he learned pretty much everything that he knows from me. I'm not going to toot my own horn here, but when you think about guys that have come through St. Ed's, and a lot of these programs, Mark, that we see that they're lineage guys. They go to St. Ed's because their cousin did, their uncle did, their dad did, and it's just part of growing up. This is what I'm going to do because everybody else in my family did, and it's kind of like the crest right here, right? It's a badge of honor, so to say.
It is tradition. So how did you get to Ohio State when your dad played at Michigan?
Well, we're not going to talk about that yet. Lloyd Carr messed up. Sorry, Lloyd.
Hang out with Walt for 10 minutes, you'll know how that went down.
When you start to think about some guys here on the Springfield team, we talked about the offense, Davion Williams, Duncan Bradley, Deshaun Martin, Markel Wade, Jerome Howell. When you look at the center, Royce Rogers, we talked about him, a sophomore, Zaire Fletcher, Noah Epperson at right guard and right tackle, respectively. Your quarterback, Brent Upshaw, Javen Norman, the running back slot / DeAndre Long, also the sophomore coming out of the backfield. And defensively, Jackson, Christian Curran DuBois, Pearson Baker, Jackson Himes, Kevin Fair, Kyron Dolby. When you look at some of the guys in the back half of the defense, Aaron Scott, Javen Martin, Ty Myers, Bob Wafer. These guys are going to have their hands full, but the one thing I see when I look at this depth chart, seniors, juniors, these are guys that are experienced, they know what they're doing, and the task that they have at hand, wanting to, we call it the big payback, right? The get back. Losing 2 of them to St. Ed's, this is their chance tonight.
Hey, third time's a charm. Can they get it done? We'll wait and see down on the field. But yeah, in years past, this game, St. Ed's versus Springfield in the state championship game, it's almost flipped for the Springfield Wildcats. 2 years ago, and even last year, an experienced offense and inexperienced defense. This year, an experienced defense, but an inexperienced offense. So what's going to happen? I mean, hey, we'll just have to wait and find out on the gridiron.
Mark, that sounds good to me. If you're Coach Mo Douglas, I think going into this ball game, I would rather have the experienced defense better than an inexperienced offense.
Well, don't we always say that great defenses win championships? But the teams you remember,
Massillon Tigers about that.
The teams you remember are the ones that are playing in December, and we've got 2 good ones that are over here tonight.
All right, Jeff. When we start to look at predictions for this game tonight, how do you feel this thing goes?
Well, they have convinced me it's going to be much more of a game because I was looking at things on paper, not understanding the adversity that the team has gone through, and that speaks volumes. And if it's something that they can pull this off, that sounds like a movie to me, and a Cinderella script type of thing. But I think at the end of the day, I got to stick with my guy Tom Lombardo and go with the St. Ed's.
That's your guy, man.
Got to get
I'll tell you what, I got to go against him because the Atlanta Golden Eagles, he took them down, so I'm still a little bit upset about that. The Ohio High School Athletic Association, we want to say thank you again for having us host this pregame tailgate show as we get ready for the Division I state championship game. Go back, follow us on our social medias, everything that not only OHSAA does, but myself and my guys here at Stark Media, at Stark Media Team on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Subscribe on the YouTube channel, obviously our website, which is powered by TKDS Sports, starkmedia.tkdssports.com. Go check out that channel right there. We have 3 streaming live channels that you'll be able to catch a bunch of winter sports action on. And guys, when we talk about this pregame tailgate show being powered by TKDS Sports, you guys are the ones that are the face of it, out in front of it. Tell us where people can go and find you guys.
So I guess Matt doesn't want to explain it. Make sure to go visit our website, www.tkdssports.com, and visit us on TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, all at TKDS Sports. That's where we'll post our links, where we will be broadcasting the games, what games we will be doing. We also just launched the TKDS Sports Network radio app, so you can also go check that out as well.
And I think our guy Kevin back here, we got to wish him a happy birthday again, but also, he's got a new pair of shoes coming his way because he's still got his boat shoes on there. He got a little wet out there earlier, the elements outside. We're trying to dry him off a little bit, keep him, he's the guy that kind of powers this whole thing, runs this thing. When you think about homering this thing here, and I'll let you guys do that. I know that you guys have an affliction for Springfield and what they do. They're out of your area. How do you really see this thing breaking down here tonight, Jackson?
St. Ed's, I've said this off air, I'm going to say it on air, this is the best team that they put on the field in recent memory. St. Edward's, and that's saying something.
It is.
That's saying something, because they're always a dominant team. They're always the most dominant team in the state of Ohio, but this is the best team that they've put on the field in quite some time. I think they get a big win over Springfield. They're going to three-peat against the Wildcats.
Okay. How do you see it going, Matt?
Well, I want to say third time's a charm for Springfield, that they can get it done, but St. Ed's, I think, just brings way too much to the table. You take a look at what the defense has been able to do so far this season. You take a look at what the offense has been able to do so far this year. Only 27 points allowed in the postseason so far this year, 17 of them coming in one game. It's tough for a team to allow 17 points in one playoff game and 27 points, say, through two playoff games. They've done it through all five. Springfield, they've dealt with the adversity. They're on a 7-game winning streak right now. They started off the season 3-5. They're now 10-5. I just feel like the offense is a little bit too much of inexperience on the Springfield offense. Obviously, the defense should play a great game. I expect it to be more of a defensive matchup between both of these two teams. There's one team that has a more experienced offense. That's St. Ed's. That's the Eagles. I'm going with St. Ed's in this one.
Man, aren't we getting into hockey season? Do you believe in miracles, right? I mean, you guys...
I'm happy that they said Eds, because if I pick Eds, they're going to say, hey, we're not going to have you on our podcast that we had talked about. So I'm still in there with it. But, hey, you're right. You know, hockey is close.
I do like the third time as a charm, and I think that Springfield, after you talk about the defense and what they bring to the table being experience, I think they're going to be able to slow St. Edward a little bit. Not a lot, just a little bit, right? Find a way to score points. That's going to be the biggest thing, as you mentioned, Jackson. You can't get down into the red zone and think that you're going to be able to walk away with a field goal. You know, we always talk about ending every possession on a kick, whether it's a punt, a field goal, hopefully it's an extra point. Springfield has to find a way to score touchdowns when they get down there, when they get those opportunities. You have to play mistake-free, opportunistic offense. You have to be relentless on defense. They have those capabilities. And when you have superior special units, which we've seen it through every one of these state championship games thus far, the team that has had superior special units has come away with the win, Jeff.
Absolutely. The thing for Eds, for me, and talking with Tom, he didn't necessarily expect to get the state title the last 2 years. He felt like the class right now, the senior class on the field tonight, is when they were going to get their state title. So to have the last two is like to get this third one is going to be icing on the cake.
They took down Medina in the playoffs this year, but think about what Medina had just a few years back when you have Drew Aller, who's now throwing the rock for Penn State. I mean, that was a tough uphill battle.
Right, absolutely.
I think that when you look at this Eds team, they're not sexy. When you talk about, they're just going to pound the rock, and they're going to pound the rock, and they're not going to get away from it.
I think there's a guy at left tackle and left guard that may disagree with you, because offensive line is sexy. The big offensive lineman.
Because you're the big sexy, right? 72.
That's what we bring to the table. Offensive lineman, it's not glamorous, it's not sexy, it's ground and pound, it's physical, it doesn't stand out, it's not highlight reel stuff, it's not ESPN top 10, but when you can impose your will against that defense, that to me is smash mouth, tough nose, hard nosed football, and that's what the state of Ohio prides itself on.
Hey, we talk about offensive linemen not being particularly sexy. Well, Jason Kelsey, he was voted for the world's sexiest man.
There we
the
go.
Philadelphia Eagles center.
I am so impressed.
Look at that nugget. I love it, man. We're going to end on that one, and we're getting ready to send it over to our guys on the OHSAA radio network. Go to OHSAA.org. That's powered by TKDS Sports. And also check it out live on TV at Spectrum News 1. Again, we want to thank everybody for tuning in to us on all the different social media platforms and streaming and listening and watching us here on the OHSAA pregame tailgate show. Thanks for tuning in. We'll have more for you coming this week. We got 3 more games coming up tomorrow, but the big one tonight, Division I state championship on the line between Lakewood, St. Edward, and Springfield.